And it starts off in Job where a lot of preachers, at funerals I've heard, I never understood, but they always, preaching that where the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. And what God has taught me in the Bible that the Lord does give, but the Lord doesn't take away. Everything that we get, we lose. God never takes nothing. He promises us life. One thing about my dad, that I got to know him as a minister, I thank God that I was there the last 3 months with him day and night, because we prayed together. I told him about God, and he used to tell me a lot of things that I didn't know. Things that I guess he had to get off his shoulders, and things about me and him and our relationship. And we got really close. We would pray together, and he would tell me to get up and hold his hand because he was scared. Right at the end, he would get us scared a lot. So I would tell him, Dad, don't be scared. Just ask God to give you peace. But one thing I do know, that my dad never did complain, and I would ask him if he was in pain, and he would say no. So I know that God was there with him all that time, because for what he went through in that short time, he never said he was in pain. I asked him every day, are you hurt? He never hurt. But in Psalms chapter 90, let me go with Romans 1:12. Romans 1:12 talks about that death came into the world by sin. God, when he created the world, we weren't supposed to die. Back in the first day, they would live up to 1,000, 2,000 years, but they could even live longer if sin would have never come into the world. But as the world was longer here on earth, people started dying younger. I think the oldest one was Methuselah. I think he died at 964 years. But then they started going down. In Psalms 90, God talks about giving us abundant life. Well, John 10:10, Jesus said, the thief cometh forth not but to kill, steal, and destroy. And it said, but Jesus came to give us life and more abundantly. Well, what is an abundant life? In Psalms chapter 90, it talks about that God gives us 70 years. And if he gives us 80, it's going to be by labor and sorrow. When we get older, we start hurting. But one thing about my dad, he lived that long life. He got to live that 7 years like the Bible promises. He wasn't cut short in life. And then he didn't have to go through that sorrow where it talks, if it is 80 years, you go through sorrow and pain, because he's never been in a hospital in his life. He never complained about being hurt because he didn't have to, but his last couple of months in the hospital, I could see it in his eyes. He didn't like it. And he would tell me, I'm sorry to put you in this problem. I said, no, Dad, it's not a problem. You're my dad. And I enjoy being here with you, because you're my dad. He goes, but this problem is not yours. I said, yeah, it is my problem. As long as you're my dad, you're my problem. But I noticed he would tell me I'm tired, So he wasn't used to this. And then they would have to tie his hands down, because he'd always try to pull that pipe out of his mouth. And I would tell him, I said, Dad, God has given you a long life. Just tell God to give you that peace. But I would always see that peace in his face, because I never seen hurt. I never seen, he hurt for us. He always talked about getting out and helping my sister and helping my brother. That's all he had in his mind. I need to get out and help Ray finish building over there, and when's Rachel getting out so I can help her do this? So, he's always been that type of man. He never thought of himself. He thought about others. And like I said, in John 10:10, the word says that the thieves cometh not but for to kill, steal, and destroy. And Jesus said that I have come to give you abundant life. And he has given us an abundant life. In Genesis 2:16 and 17, it talks about when he created Adam and Eve, and he told them that if they were to eat of the tree of the knowledge of not evil, that they would die. And at that moment, they died spiritually. They died from that relationship with God. But from that sin, in Romans 5:12 says that by sin came into the world, and death by sin. So see, this is something that we got to go through. And God started teaching me this before my dad. I think that's why God gave me the strength to handle my dad's death. Something that I thought I wasn't going to be able to bear. And I used to tell God every night, don't take my dad, because I'm not going to handle it. I'll quit you. I said, you take my dad, I'll quit you. I would tell God that. But he gave me the strength to handle and keep going forward, And that's all I want to tell you, that we all have to go through this in life. And I figured that nobody knew my dad, no minister knew my dad better than me, because I am a minister. When I got out, he always used to tell me, you're going to go preach. Where are you going to go preach this week? Because that's how he knew me as a preacher. Even though I have faults, even though I make mistakes, but there's no man perfect in this world. There's not a preacher in this world that can tell me they don't sin no more. Because that'd be the biggest lie in the world. The Bible says we all sin and fall short of the glory of God, and that's daily. And when you become a Christian, you should know that you're more of a sinner than the sinner, because the sinner is ignorant. He don't know his sin. But when we're Christians, we have the light. We've been enlightened. We know when we're sinning, and we still sin against God. So see, that's the thing that I know, and I used to tell my dad all the time, Dad, I want to be better, but I can't. And see, that's what God taught me, that, the more I draw closer to God, the more the enemy draws closer to me. See, Satan don't like us to be out being a new person and winning people for him. But my dad, he was proud of me, and he used to tell me, I'm glad that you changed, I'm glad I don't have to worry. And we grew real close these last 3 months. He lived with me for 2 weeks because he got out of the hospital, and he came and moved in with me because I had to watch him. I had to feed him because he couldn't get up. I had to take him to the restroom. I had to cook for him. I remember one night I come home and he looked at me and he goes, I haven't had supper yet. He got used to being fed. I told him, wait a minute, let me take a shower. I'll give you something. But, that was my dad. I would do that for him, And one thing that I do thank God, that he gave him a peace. I could see that peace in him. One night he woke up and tears just started coming out. And I said, Dad, I don't know what you're trying to tell me, but ask God to give you a peace, and I guarantee you'll go to sleep. I said, I don't know what you're hurting. I don't know are you hurting? He told me no. So I don't know what he had in his mind, but I asked God to give him a peace, and about 30 minutes later, he went to sleep. So I just want to remember my dad. My dad was a good man. I've never, everything that I learned off my dad, I've learned off this man. I never learned it by beatings. He never had to hit me. Never did I ever remember getting hit by. Well, I do remember one time when I caught my sister on fire in the arm. I remember that one. He got a 2x4 and hit me. That was the only time I ever remember him hitting me. But I literally caught my sister's hands on fire. She was running, both hands were all on fire. And I got a beating that time. But that's the only time I ever remember in my life of him hitting me. Everything that he taught me, he didn't tell me to do it. He lived the life. The hard worker I am right now, it's not because he told me I had to work. He showed me how to work. I watched him. He worked day and night. And it's made me that type of person. I like to be at work, and it's because this is what this man taught me. So, I just thought I'd give up and let y'all know that, even in his last days, he started drawing close to God. But the thing about it is that, he loved all his family, and I used to tell him, he asked about his birthday, he would ask about Eddie, where's my brothers and sisters, they don't come see me. I used to tell him, but Dad, you never go see them. I said, you gotta have a relationship with somebody for them to come see you. I mean, if you don't go visit somebody, they'll never come visit you because they might not think you don't want them around. I said, you got to learn how to make a relationship. I try to visit family as much as I can, but I'm like my dad, I work a lot. I go to prisons, I go visit prisoners, so I'm busy. And most of the time that I do see family is when they're around, not when I'm around, is when they're around, or I stop by to visit somebody. But I thank God that He's given me this opportunity to be the man I am today, because if it wasn't for God in my life, and one thing that I told my dad, and he didn't understand it, and he told me one night, he goes, well, I don't think you really love me because you're not listening to me. I said, Dad, I went to prison for you, Dad. I said, and I didn't do it because he told me to do it. I do it because people used to pick on me. And as a son, I was the type of son that you weren't going to hurt my family. And I did it out of love. I didn't do it, and I didn't regret not 1 year of them 12 years that I did. You know why? Because that's where I met God. And that's where God made me the minister I am today. If it wasn't for that, I might be dead right now. Or I might be in hell. I don't know where I'd be. But if it wasn't for that experience that I did, I would have never met God in prison, and I wouldn't be the minister I am today. So I just wanted to leave y'all with them thoughts, and if y'all know where y'all are heading, because one thing about my dad, he made his peace with God. Sometimes we don't have that choice. Sometimes we die automatically. And do you know that you're ready to meet God? You know, and it's not about religion. You know, in Matthew chapter 7, verse 21 and 23, Jesus said, not everyone that says, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven. He says, many will say in that day, have we not prophesied in your name? Have we not healed? Just because you prophesy, just because you talk about God, or just because you go to church, doesn't mean that you'll make it to heaven. Because he says, but those that do the will of my Father is the one. See, just like when you buy a car, you buy everything. It's got a manual. And you know, this right here, Holy Bible, you know what that means? There's a meaning to Holy Bible. That means that he only left you believers instructions before leaving earth. Just like a car, it's got instructions. The only way to make that car run, you got to go by the instructions. Well, the only way we'll ever leave earth and get to heaven, we got to go by these instructions. Without these instructions, we'll never make it. And I thank God that, you know, my dad had the opportunity to do that. You know, he got back a little bit, but once he got back in the hospital, he started drawing closer to God. You know, so that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to let y'all know that, you know, I'm glad, and, you know, even though I'm hurt, but I'm at peace because I was with him, and I know that God was in his life, and I know, and I really believe that he's on his way to heaven. He's not in heaven yet because the Bible tells us we go to paradise, we go under the altar of heaven. But when Jesus comes back, one day he will be resurrected and he will be in his sight.